I was a 24-year-old big kid at University of California, Santa Barbara, learning remote sensing from luminaries like Jeff Dozier. And we had a guest lecturer come for a semester there, teaching some remote sensing class. And I went to him one day after a lecture and asked him if there were any jobs here. He was from back here at Goddard, and I asked him about potential jobs. And he mentioned, well, maybe you could work with Fife. And I immediately lit up. Barney Fife? He's one of my heroes since I was a kid. So instead, I came to Goddard. I met with Forrest and immediately liked him. We had a great rapport. I don't know how much you remember this. He wasn't put off by the long hair, and I found out later he had a period too where he had a long ponytail. And so that was it. I packed up my car and drove cross country and came to Goddard, where I was for 10 years working with Forrest and Piers on Fife and Boreas, and it was a great experience for me. So I was involved really in locating sites at both Fife and Boreas locations. Setting up things like this. I didn't know what half the instruments were, so I was learning as I went. Do any of you recognize what this site is, those involved with Boreas? 16. We had codes for all of these, of course, and I found this pack of photos before I came down here, and I recognized a bunch of these sites, but I don't remember the names of a lot of them. But this was all just a great experience for me to see all the technology, and but really my role was to be able to work with Forrest and Piers to link this with satellite remote sensing, and to be able to participate in the field activities and process data and make it available to a broader community. Here's some of that topography Dave Schimmel was talking about earlier. So that was great, and for me, especially as a young scientist, to be able to work with people like Forrest and Piers was just immensely satisfying, and to co-author these publications. I think Forrest, you showed at least one of these earlier. Yeah, to be involved with that was fantastic. I showed ones which I first saw. That's right. And who's this character on the lower right now? Forrest. So that was great. And then Boreas, the god of the north wind, that was a completely different experience, of course, than Fife, as many of you have talked about. And so my role in that activity was to help locate the field sites. We had a whole series, some of you may remember these, what we called auxiliary sites. I could never spell auxiliary correctly. We have that wrong in a lot of the documents. And so as part of that process, we would go out and locate sites that looked good in aerial photos or satellite imagery that looked to be, fairly large, relatively homogeneous patches that we could use to extend algorithms developed from field measurements to remote sensing images and extend them. So we'd do things like go out, and this is a picture of me shooting arrows up into the canopy with fishing line on them, and then would pull up ribbon on the fishing line, reel it in. Sometimes balloons, pull up balloons until the top of the canopy, and then when we'd go out later and fly around a bit, we'd be able to locate the sites more easily by looking for the colorful ribbons and balloons in the canopy. So this is how we went about locating a number of the sites. And then really I just have some photos again of some of the towers. It was the same story with the towers. I went out with, some of you may remember Don Leckie. Went out and spent a lot of time with Don on these ATV vehicles, trekking off into the forest, and that was a lot of fun. Leckie had a real hard time with these ATVs. He flipped it over twice, and I had to help him get back on and get back out. But that was great. And then we ended up, with this kind of amazing infrastructure to do all the eddy covariance measurements and energy balance measurements. And which site is this? Do you remember, Forrest? The one on the right, at least, I think.
The jack pine or the fen?
I don't know how well you can see it, but it's there's Piers is in there on the left, and fen site. That's what I was thinking. Not a lot of vegetation there, yeah. I do remember trekking into one of these sites, the northern old black spruce site, with Piers and him and Paul Jarvis having a very heated conversation, let's say, about some of the mission planning that was going on in the evenings and making it more efficient. And you know, Piers was Paul Jarvis's student back in the earlier days. So here's some other of the towers that ended up going in. I think there's old jack pine, old black spruce, maybe younger jack pine flux tower sites in the northern study area. And in the southern study area, the old aspen, I don't know, one is probably jack pine and black spruce. I can't tell quite well from here, but these scaffold towers as well as the other tower sites. So that was just, you know, it was a fantastic experience. I'm just really lucky to have been part of it. It certainly changed my world, as many of you have indicated in your talks, and as well as the science that we continue to work on. And then finally, some of you may remember this. Is this Waskesiu Falls? Does that sound right?
Pissio.
What's it called?
It's on the top side, huh?
Yeah.
Scott, come on.
If you just want to hear us say piss you.
Where is this?
It's in
Anacostia.
Thompson, southeast of Thompson.
Yeah, okay. Just amazing rapids. And then we had a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it and learned a lot, and I think we continue to learn a lot. And now I've ended up going from that experience to being the science lead of the next generation Arctic boreal vulnerability experiment. So there's dozens of science teams involved with that and hundreds of people, and we are off and running, and we're a year into it now, and planning the aircraft campaign. The deputy co-lead with me is Chip Miller, and so we're even now planning flights for next year. Hopefully some bridge flights in 2018 and again in 2019 for sites in Alaska and Western Canada. A lot of the same instruments, you know, LiDAR, multi-frequency radar. Hopefully we'll have whatever comes out of an announcement that's out now, where selections will be made in a month or more, perhaps, for using the instrument data that comes from these, and maybe we'll get some experimental instruments flying as well, the latest technology. So we continue the endeavor. Thank you.